Hey, what's up, guys? Mike Fry, President and CEO of Deepwater Subsea. I want to thank you for taking the time to come join us on Facebook Live for some leadership and professional development training. Really excited about today. It's something that we've been kind of building up to, and as I mentioned yesterday in yesterday's kind of broadcast, for those of you who are willing to make the investment in us, we're willing to make the investment in you. And today we have a very special guest, somebody who we do a lot of work with here at Deepwater Subsea, someone who I can truly call a friend, and probably one of the most positive people I know. And what we're going to do is, obviously Dallas is here, and I got Gary Bartels, who is the founder and executive director of Oath Inc. And what I want to do is allow Gary to kind of tell you a little bit about his organization, and then I'm going to turn it over to Gary and Dallas to talk a little bit about leadership, and kind of just professional attitude, and how do you go through dealing with tough situations. So first and foremost, Gary, I want to welcome you to the show. Welcome to the Deepwater Subsea Facebook Live broadcast. Excited to have you on board. And do me a favor, just tell me a little bit about your background and tell me a little bit about Oath.
I will. First off, thank you guys for having me. It's always a blessing when I get a phone call or an email or a text from the Deepwater Subsea family asking me to come in and speak on one of these things. So I wholeheartedly appreciate that. Oath Inc. is a nonprofit organization that I started back in 2014, and what it specifically does is it confronts the wounds of PTSD for a lot of folks that came back from combat, whether it be Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam. We have some World War II guys. And what we do is we take these heroes on outdoor excursions, whether it be hunting trips, fishing trips, camping trips, hiking, or if it's just something as simple as sitting around a campfire drinking a cold can of something or other and just talking about what's on their mind and in their heart. We've seen some great productivity from it. We've gotten emails and text messages from people that have said up front that this program has helped to save their life because they were in a dark place. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. That animal on the wall or that fish in the cooler is great, but when someone tells you that you helped save my life, that hits home for me, and that's what we're trying to do. My background is United States Army officer, infantry, did 2 tours in Iraq, one with the 101st Airborne Division, and then the second with the 174th Infantry Brigade out of Fort Drum, New York, and hands down worked with some of the best soldiers that the United States Army has ever seen. Had some great NCOs and some great officers in charge of me when I did those combat tours. So I was very blessed to be in a leadership environment that really honed me to be the leader that I am today. So doing great things, man, and proud to be here.
No, it's good. Do me a favor, tell me a little bit about some of the activities. I see you guys on Facebook all the time, kicking out, different events and stuff. What do you guys have coming up on the calendar for the next couple of weeks?
Well, for the next couple of weeks, we've got some pretty good events. We're doing a fishing trip that we're going to take some guys out deep sea fishing. We've got some hunting trips. We're going to take some guys out and do a little hunting for some black buck doe. Looking out a little further, what we got coming up in July is the Warrior Wives Retreat. And one of the things that Oath prides itself on is, we don't just take care of that hero. We take care of that hero and his family unit, for a lack of a better term. More times than not, we unfortunately forget that when a hero goes downrange and deploys, that spouse, that wife, is left to take care of the home front. So we're going to do a Warrior Wives Retreat. It's our second one. We did one last year. This year we're going to take between 17 and 20 of our Oath registered hero spouses down to Port Aransas to a couple beach houses, and we're going to take them fishing, and we're going to do some soul healing for them where they can get into an environment and kind of open up, if you will, in their own domain and tell these other ladies, hey, what you were talking about with your husband, I'm experiencing the same thing with my husband. How did you solve that? What did you do? So that's a very important event for us. Next weekend we've got our Memorial Day Bash, and we're expecting a huge turnout for that, 250 to 300 people. It's going to be held at the Kuntz High School in Kuntz, Texas, my alma mater. So it's going to be a great event. We're going to have a barbecue, we're going to have cotton candy, we're going to have snow cones, but more importantly, we're going to have a memorial for all the 602 heroes from the great state of Texas that gave their life in Iraq and Afghanistan. 602 people, Mike. Think about that. That's a lot of people that have laid down their life for you, for me, for us. So I'm going to do a little bit of a walk, and then we're going to close it out on Sunday with this great big event. We're going to have some live music, the whole 9 yards, and I won't lie to you, at the end of the day, there's going to be some tears and some looks up and thanking God that we're still here and we got heroes like this that can defend us. So.
No, that's good. What about this weekend? I know our kind of co-host here is being inaugurated into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the Diamonds in Denham.
Yeah, we've been both has been invited by Mike Nash and the Impact to Hero team to come and man a table at the Impact to Hero Gala on Sunday night, and this will be the third time that I've attended one of these galas, and I'll man up and tell you that the first two times I went, there were tears because they induct these heroes into their Hall of Fame, and heroes they are. You're going to hear the stories about these individuals, about what they did on the field of combat and what they endured and how they came back lesser than when they went over from the great state or a great country and defended us. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to meet some of those guys that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame and to shake their hand and to hear them tell their story to you one-on-one, or to talk to their spouse even and see how they have changed since they came back from combat. It's really a truly humbling experience. So anytime that we're ever invited to attend this gala for Impact to Hero, I immediately jump on it. There's never a question of yes or no. It's a how many seats can I get kind of thing. So Mike Nash and the Impact to Hero family have given us 10 seats to fill, and we're going to fill those with Oath veterans, Oath supporters, Oath donors, and we're going to go and we're going to have a good time. We're going to raise some money for a very worthy cause, so I'm excited about it.
Oh, that's good. All right, guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Dallas and Gary. We're going to give them the opportunity to talk about leadership and really talk about some things that I think are a challenge for a lot of people. And the reason I say that is, you know, one of the reasons I asked Gary to come in is Gary's probably one of the most, if not the most positive person that I know when it comes to dealing with difficult situations. And I'm going to let Gary tell his story. You know, I'm not going to take away from it. But I think in this market, with the challenges that we face each and every day, especially in this downturn, a lot of what you have to deal with is your attitude. And you know, some of the hardships that Gary has gone through, I've never seen someone that can remain so positive and come out on the other side ahead of it than Gary. And you know, Gary talked about the Impact to Heroes Gala this weekend. We have our own Hall of Fame inductee with Dallas going in. Very proud as a business owner to have Dallas on the team. Matter of fact, I learned something about Dallas every day or every week that I never knew before. And it's very special for me as a vet, as a president and CEO, to have someone of Dallas's quality on board on our team. And it's something that's very exciting. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn this next session over to Dallas and Gary. I'm excited to hear about what they have to say, and then when we're done with that, I'm going to go and do a little bit about training and just personal and professional development and really give you guys something to think about. So I appreciate you guys coming on board. I'm going to turn this over to Dallas and Gary, and we'll let them take it from there.
Hey guys, Dallas Bozeman, Performance Manager. We haven't had the opportunity to see me before. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate you guys checking in and seeing what we have to offer here at Deepwater Subsea, and just the opportunity that we love to give back to the community and offer up some free training and some insight. So, Gary, I'm thinking this weekend, you know, we're getting ready to do this, kick this little event off, and what are we going to talk about? And I had the opportunity to take a fellow brother of mine who's working at a headquarters position out on a hunt this week. And while we're talking about, you know, what are the leadership challenges that I see outside of the military and the oil and gas industry, and the same challenges that he sees at a headquarters slot happening down, you know, at the flight squadron, you know, level. And they're much the same. And it's all about building relationships. The biggest problem is getting frontline supervisors and getting guys that are in those mid-level leadership roles to develop relationships, and then the same thing for the guys kind of in the executive roles to build relationships with those guys and mentor them through the process. And I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to attend a LeaderCast conference and hear Dr. Henry Cloud speak, and he had a great analogy for it. And what he did is he drew a box, and he said, as a leader, you're in one of these four corners. You either have no connection, which means you haven't built any relationships. Mm-hmm. You have a bad connection, which means you're in a negative relationship somewhere. Either this is, you know, not a good connection with the people you're working with, you don't have a good connection with your executives, either you're the problem or somebody else in your organization is poisoning the water. Then the third block was this pseudo good connection, and this is you feel like you're in a good spot, but you're really not. You're either surrounded yourself by yes men, you've built this environment where everybody's kind of just compliant, or you're focusing on numbers and KPIs and things that make you feel good, but it's not really a true reflection of what's happening in your organization. And then the fourth spot was where we all desire to be, and that's that authentic relationships, that authentic connection. You know, everybody's free to be who they are. Everyone has a voice, and good, bad, or ugly, you know, we kind of have that unconditional love for each other. We're all in this together. I need you to be real with me, and I'm going to be real with you. So, talking about that, you know, as an infantry leader, how important was it for you to have authentic relationships with the guys that you led in combat?
For a lack of a better term, Dallas, it was life or death. I mean, when you're faced with that combat experience and you're downrange, and you can speak to this too, but you know, when you're overseas in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever it may be, and you've got those NCOs and those junior enlisted around you, that relationship is paramount. Because when you're inside that fob and you're going to the chow hall and when you're in garrison or doing whatever, that's fine and dandy. But when you receive that op order and you step outside that wire and rounds are now going both ways, if you don't have a good relationship with those around you, surrounding you, helping to support that op order and support the mission of the higher command, then there's going to be a fundamental breakdown in both communication and in safety. So as an infantry officer, being part of a unit that did patrols on a daily basis, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, it was paramount for me, the utmost importance to have that relationship with my guys. And I'm not talking about a relationship where, yeah, you know what, I think Sergeant De La Garza is okay. We're going to be good going outside the wire. It was a relationship where pulled up a chair next to Sergeant De La Garza when we're back and we just start joking and hey man, you know, this op order that we just pitched out, how do you feel about it? Is there anything that we can tweak to make it more effective? How's your family doing? You know, just going into stuff to make them know in their heart of hearts that you genuinely care. You're not just checking the box on leadership and caring, you genuinely care about them. And unfortunately, and we've all seen it, unfortunately, we've seen leaders in the military that have failed at that because, and at no fault to their own, they just don't understand how in the weeds you need to get with that leadership to get to where you need to be. So when you step outside that wire, there's no question in your mind. You've got a competent, well-rehearsed team around you that trust you.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very important piece, you know, that relationship equity where you have to get the buy-in, you have to get the trust of the people you work with, because what reason do they have to let you speak into their life if they don't trust you and you've never taken the time to really get to know them? And especially in the world we live in now, you know, outside of the military with oil and gas, you have guys that are out there, you're on a team. I mean, you got guys 3 weeks on, you're on a ship together, this is all you see, this is your family. Social media goes everywhere.
Yeah.
These guys have Facebook, they have Instagram, they have access to all the home life stuff still, so they're not isolated from it. So all these personal things that are happening at home, they're getting brought into the workplace.
Yeah.
So how important is it to learn how to deal with those things and be able to have that open communication with guys about what's happening in their personal life?
Again, I think it's very important. You know, if you want to parlay it over into corporate America, you know, working offshore for a little while. You know, we had instances working offshore where guys were injured. And, you know, building upon what you said with social media, you know, there is no secrets anymore in today's environment because social media allows for stuff to be broadcast within seconds sometimes. So if you as a leader aren't ahead of the game and understand what's going on, it's going to really handicap you in your day-to-day activities, especially, you know, hypothetically speaking, if you've got a floor hand that realizes or finds out somehow through social media or something that something's happened to his family or something's happened to someone he knows in his hometown, when he comes out to that floor and he starts throwing around that synthetic-based mud and the pipe starts going down hole and his mind is somewhere else, you've got a perfect recipe for disaster. So you as a leader, you know, if you happen to be a Facebook friend with him, you can say, hey, Dallas, I was on my Facebook a while ago and I saw that somebody tagged you in a post where one of your buddies got in a car wreck back home. Is everything okay, man? Are you good? If you need to take a little time, in the change room and compose yourself or whatever and get your mind right, by all means, please do so. But when you step out on that rig floor, I need you to be 100% because we got all these other floor hands that depend upon you and me. So I think as a leader, if you're not going to really address that and really pay attention to what needs to be paid attention to, you're really going to set yourself and your team up for failure.
Absolutely. And, it's all about the choices you make. Are you going to choose to engage in these things, or are you going to choose to withdraw yourself? You have to be able to start becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations, because as a leader, you're kind of expected to be that calm in the storm. You're going to be the voice of reason. You're going to be the glue that keeps this thing together. So as we kind of transition into that, we look at the way the market is now. It's a tough market for everybody. We're all hurting. We're all struggling, but we have to get through it. So we can't always change our circumstances. We don't always have a say in that, but we always have a say in our choices. So I believe that you have a very unique story as far as the oil and gas goes, and I just want you to share of what that road looked like and kind of the emotions that came out of it. And I know it's very emotional, for you as it happened. But what were the emotions that you had to ride on that roller coaster, and then on the backside, what was the end result, and how did you get there based off the choices you made and what you chose to believe in?
Absolutely. I do have a really interesting story, but I don't have the monopoly on that. There are a lot of people out there that are struggling and that are going through similar, if not worse, than what I went through. I grew up in the oil field. My daddy worked in the oil field. My uncle worked in the oil field. So I knew getting into the oil field that it was going to be a cyclical type of work. And I'll never forget the day I called my dad and told him that I accepted a job in the oil field. He hung up on me. And I called him back and I told him, this is what I want to do with my life. I learned it from you and from my uncle, and it's a good, noble profession, one that's very comparable to the military, and I want to give it a shot. And came into the oil field right out of the military in 2009, and a couple years ago, I was working for Vantage Drilling and got laid off. It's my first time to be laid off in corporate America, and part of my testimony is being completely and brutally honest. When I was laid off, I drove home that day, and I remember crying as I was driving home, wondering how I was going to tell my wife and 3 kids that I no longer had a job, and I was no longer going to be able to provide. And when that initial issue comes to you, it's human nature to think about the worst possible scenario. So I'm driving my truck home, and I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm gonna lose my house. Sammy's gonna have to quit football. My wife is gonna have to put her college on hold. I'm like, my goodness, what am I gonna do? And we as men, we as leaders, we're expected to be the strong backbone of a situation. So I got home, and not immediately, but I obviously told my family what had happened. And you come forth with that. It's gonna be all right. We're gonna pray. We're gonna have faith. And everything happens for a reason, so we're going to move on from this and learn from it. But I won't lie to you. Up front in front of my family, I was a strong person. But, man, I cried. They gave me 30 days notice. So I cried in the shower, praying about what I was going to do. I cried driving to an office that was soon going to be empty. I cried on the way home from work, still trying to figure out what I was going to do to find employment. And it really tests the very fiber of a man when you're confronted with something like that, especially when you've got 3 little mouths that look up to you for guidance and support. So by the grace of God, I landed another opportunity. It took me about 3 weeks, but I landed another opportunity, and I was there for about a year. And then most recently, about a month and a half ago, I got laid off from there. So here we are in a span of 14 months. I've seen 2 layoffs in my life. And the first reaction to the first layoff and the subsequent reaction to the second layoff were the exact opposite. And that's all because of my faith in God and how He has pulled me through everything that I've been in. I got laid off the second time, and it was very, very funny how it happened. I got laid off on a Thursday, and I was going to go home and tell my wife the same way. But this time I was driving home. There were no tears. There was no doubt. All there was, okay, I'm listening to you. You tell me where you want me to go, and I will go there. So I get home, and my wife tells me, I got a promotion at work, and I'm ecstatic. And I said, well, I'm not going to tell her today because I don't want to ruin her day. Right. So we went to Kima that weekend, and we had a good time as a family. And I remember when I finally told her, I didn't tell her in a manner such as, Regina, I need to tell you something and you need to sit down. It was, hey babe, God closed another door for us, but he's about to open up another one. This is what's happened. But don't you worry, because I'm not worrying. We're not going to worry. God's going to pull us through just like he has every other time. And I'll never forget, I told her, and I can't remember if it was the next day or the day after, she looked at me. We were standing in our kitchen. She looked at me. She said, I want to get to the point where I have the faith that you do. And I said, well, I wasn't always like this. There was a point in my life when I came back from combat that I really didn't like God, because I felt like he really didn't like me. And I know now that that was a total wrong thing to do. But I was in a place in my life, Dallas, where I didn't trust God. I didn't love God, didn't care for God, didn't pray to God, didn't talk to God, didn't want God. And he never gave up on me. He kept on giving me opportunities to better myself and my family. And it didn't really happen for me until my wife found me on the bathroom floor in our house here in Katy having a quasi-nervous breakdown because I just didn't know what direction I wanted to take with my life. And a whole lot of tears, a whole lot of praying, a whole lot of good people, and we eventually started Oath. And since then, Oath has healed my soul and probably saved my life. And it's given me the opportunity to drag myself back up to the foot of the cross and look up to God and say, I'm sorry that I wasn't there when I needed to be. And because of me coming back to my faith, you know, it gives me the ability when I'm laid off for a second time in 14 months just to, I hear you, I understand what's happening. I don't understand why it's happening, but I don't have to. All I have to do is step forward 1 foot at a time with faith, and I know he's going to take care of me. So there's a lot of guys out there in oil and gas that are going through a whole lot, probably a whole lot more than me and my family. And my testimony wholeheartedly centers around my faith in God, and that's why I'm so optimistic. There's not a thing that happens in my life where I don't turn it over to God. Now, I might feel sorry for myself for a little while and wonder why, but I'll quickly turn that around and wash my hands of it and say, God, it's yours. You do with it as you will. You tell me where to go. I'm a faithful servant. I'll do whatever needs to be done. It's not always easy, man. It's not always easy, and you're going to have a lot of doubts. But if you turn it all over and you just trust and you have that positive attitude, everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. So, you know, Oath is all about taking these veterans that are struggling with PTSD and some of these things and pulling them out of that rut that they tend to get stuck in. And I look at the oil and gas industry and I see the same thing. There's a lot of guys that are coming out, you know, they've been laid off, they're going through these hard times and they're kind of getting stuck in the rut. And the connection I seem to make between the two is that they're being defined by their circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, some guys have had a hard time letting go of what happened in the past, and they've started to let that define them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because they've been victimized. You know, people have said, poor baby, you know, we're sorry for what happened to you, you know, it's too bad. Rather than looking at it as a noble choice they made, you know, this is the life they chose to do. This is their sacrifice. This is what they were created for, and they should never be ashamed of that. They should be proud of that and figure out how they can apply that to the next thing.
Yeah.
The guys in the oil and gas industry, they're taking on a noble cause. Like, this is their thing. It's how they give back to their communities. It's how they serve others. Now, when they're coming off the backside of that, it's what choice are you going to make now? Yeah, we've been laid off. We've lost jobs along the way. Now, where do you go from here? How do you serve your family? What choice are you going to make to leave that legacy? Are you going to be the guy who sits back and hopes that the whole industry revolves around you and starts to change in your favor? Or are you going to say, you know what, I can't control that, but I'm going to make the choice to serve my family, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep food on the table, be that positive example, and keep my head up so I don't pass any negative influence down onto my kids. And it's all about overcoming those obstacles, and it's all about the choices you make around those circumstances. They're either going to drive you out of that rut, or they're just going to dig you deeper in.
Yeah, no, I agree. You hit the nail on the head there when you said, you know, often we let our situations define us. And one of the things that I've seen with the oil field, much like the military, is exactly what you said. You know, and when these guys and gals go through a trying situation in their life where they're laid off or they're fired or whatever the case might be, they're going to have two choices. Your first choice is to drag your couch out on your front porch and just sit there and wait for something good to happen to you. Or the second choice is to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go make something happen. So what you see is I know I've got a lot of oil field friends, and you do too, that have been laid off, that they kind of redefine themselves by way of the market's really not what we need it to be right now to keep doing what we're doing and trying to find a job. So I'm going to redefine myself to put food on the table for my family. I'm going to turn my old shop into a woodworking shop, and I'm going to start making swinging chairs and tool sets and stuff like that for, some sort of hobby that is now turned into a means by which he supports his family. And that's one of the attitudes that I love about the oil field is, it's okay, throw what you can at me and watch how I react, because you're not going to knock me down. You might knock me down for a little while, but I'm not going to stay down. So it's interesting to watch, and I really haven't ran across anybody from my network, my group in the oil field that is just completely said, you know what, man, oil field have been laid off again. I'm done. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go collect unemployment, and I'm really not going to look for a job. Whatever happens is going to happen. I haven't ran across anybody like that. Guys go out and they file for their unemployment, but in the backside, they got that second, third career that was previously just a hobby or a good time thing for them. Now they're using it to their benefit to feed their family. So that's a unique characteristic of the oil field and the military type people, man. You can't keep them down. They've got good souls.
That's right, and it's all about the outlook. It really is. They've been handed a blank sheet of paper, and some people tend to look at it and go, all I see is a blank sheet. It's just no content. There's nothing here for me. And other people look at it as an empty canvas. Hey, this is an opportunity for me to make a cool decision in my life and to chase a new passion, to find a new purpose, to figure out how I can take all these talents and start serving others and give back. And I was blessed enough to have Mike Fry come along and give me that opportunity where I'd been working a couple of years offshore after coming out of the military, and then due to some medical issues I was no longer qualified to do that anymore. And I just really came out of that backside in the same position. I just don't know where I'm going. I'm having faith moving forward, but I'm going to keep pounding on doors. I'm going to try to create opportunity and do the best I can. And then, I happened to cross paths with Mike at an office one day, and he called me in. We sat down, we had a discussion, and the next day he made me an offer. And just the blessing that was in my life, because it was a job that I never applied for, but it was the job that I always dreamed of.
Yeah.
The opportunity to talk about leadership, to speak into people's lives and try to help them through hard situations and to pour into their life, and at the same time get to do things like this leaders expedition where we're going to go to Wyoming and just get out and really rediscover ourselves and figure out what real leadership is designed for. So it's amazing whenever you open your eyes and instead of burying your head, what can happen to you. And that's what leadership is all about. Leadership is about the attitude that you go in. What defines a leader from everybody else is the attitude he enters the situations with. Does he enter it with, I'm like everybody else, I'm just struggling, or there's opportunity in this and I'm going to come out of it and I'm going to bring some people with me along the way.
No, you're exactly right. You made a good point there too about keeping your head up and just trusting what is happening, that it's going to happen in God's perfect plan and in your favor. I'll give you a quick example how now I'm the executive director of Oath Inc. I've stepped away from oil and gas, and I've decided to, for the rest of my life, I want to lead this nonprofit and take it to bigger and better places. And it's so funny how that transpired, man. You want to talk about the hand of God at work. I got a call on Wednesday, the day before I got laid off from my previous employer, and it was Brad French, the Oath chaplain. And Brad tells me, he's like, man, he's like, Wednesday is my day to mow the grass. He's like, I just get on my lawnmower, and I got a pretty big yard, and I just mow, and I put my headphones in, I listen to Christian music or KSBJ or whatever the case might be, and it's my time to talk to God and figure out what I've been doing wrong and where I need to reset my azimuth. He's like, I need you to bear with me. He's like, but I feel like God is telling me to tell you something. And he's like, I completely understand that you just got promoted to director over at your employer, and it seems like this is from far left field, but I know God has a purpose of why I need to tell you this. I was like, okay, brother, I'm listening. I was like, kudos to you for following God's will. He's like, okay. He's like, I need you to know that if it ever comes to a point where the board of directors of Oath has to vote on you to lead us to bigger and better places as a full-time employee, he's like, I need you to know that my vote will be yes. So I listened to that and I said, wow, man. I was like, yeah. I was like, I did. I just within the last 2 weeks, just got promoted to global director, and things are going well. We're taking this department at work to bigger and better places. And, but yeah, I was like, I commend you for listening to God. So that was Wednesday. The very next morning at 10 a.m., I got laid off. And I called Brad, or I sent Brad a text message, and I said, hey man, I was like, I need you to, whenever you and your wife and family hit your knees tonight, I need you to work my name into the conversation. You know, I got laid off again, second time in 14 months. And Brad calls me almost immediately, and I pick up the phone, he says, if you don't see what God is trying to do in your life, then you're silly. And then it kind of clicked. And Brad, I think, summed it up the best. He said, God knew that you would never quit a job in corporate America to take on oath. He knew you wouldn't. He's like, you just don't have it in you, and I didn't. I never saw myself doing what I'm doing now by way of a career. He said, what God has done is He's removed that obstacle for you because He knew you wouldn't make that decision. He's like, here you are. He's like, unemployed, laid off, within 24 hours, less than 24 hours from when I told you that if the vote ever came, I would vote yes. He's like, God is opening up some amazing doors, not only for you and your family, but also for Oath. And then it kind of clicked on me, and it dawned on me. And we went through, you know, that whole cycle of voting and discussing and things of that nature. But it speaks ramifications to the fact that God's going to have His way. You know, if you try to do stuff inadvertently or on purpose to alter what the perfect plan is, He's going to put stuff into motion that will make it all happen anyway. So at the end of the day, you know, your attitude and how you look at things is going to be paramount if you have faith and you trust. You know, we can spin our wheels every day, Dallas, and go out and try to make stuff happen, and we might be doing it all for naught. But at the end of the day, when something good happens and it was right there in front of your face the whole time, again, it causes you just to look up and be like, I see what you did there. I didn't understand it at first, and I really didn't see it ever going here, but I see what you did there, and I thank you for it, because it's a losing battle. It really is a losing battle, you know. And I think as a leader, it comes to us to the point where if we don't understand the situation in which we've been thrown, if we don't collect all the data, all the intel, and support our people in a manner which will allow that situation to unfold completely, then again, you're just fighting a losing battle. So it's a blessing, man. It's an absolute blessing when you come across the people like Mike Fry that present that opportunity that's always been there in front of you, you just didn't see it, or you've been approached by a Brad French that presents that opportunity that's always been in front of you and you just didn't see it. God has a way of putting things in the proper places just when they need to be there. So
that's right. So that's what we want to leave you guys with this leadership moment, is just the understanding that every obstacle is an opportunity, and it's all about winning the small moments. You know, in that moment, you have the opportunity to make a decision, and the decision you make is going to define everything after that. Are you going to choose to win the moment, or are you going to let that moment define you? So, Gary, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, brother.
Love it. Mike, we'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I got you both up here for a minute. I just want to kind of do this for a second. You know, you talk about moments happening, when they happen, and why they happen. And, you know, Dallas mentioned about the two of us running into each other. And what I think was very interesting is, excuse me, Dallas is at the office, at Vantage's office. And I think we've talked about this before. It was like coincidence that he was at the office. That morning, I happened to call Dallas's dad and say, you know, who happened to work at Vantage. And I said, hey, do you mind if I come in and tell you about something I'm thinking about doing? And happened to be about leadership development, you know, just it had to do everything, like, you know, they say the stars align and good things happen to good people who remain positive and move forward. I wanted to build a leadership class. I had this vision for leadership. I mean, Dallas walked in, I got 800 books sitting on the table, and it's not the theoretical part of leadership, but it's, hey, leadership is leadership, but I want to build a course unlike any other course that's in the industry. Unlike any other course that's ever been developed, I want to build this course. And so I go to Vantage's office, and I just said, hey, look, I kind of call it my advisory board of some of the management team there, some of the core operations team, and I said, can I just have 20 minutes? You know, it's been a while since I've been at the office. We all used to work together. And I go in, and I think I passed Dallas either on the way in or on the way out. And Dallas happened to be there just doing a little, like, hey, come take a look at something. And something, Dallas and I joked, like 6-8 months before that. I was like, dude, you should come work for us. And Dallas was like, I don't know. Never knew Dallas from anybody. I just knew Dallas from the interactions that we had. And I said, you know what? There is a kind of a mold for what I would want as a Deepwater Subsea employee. Attitude, professionalism, just everything that Dallas exudes each and every day. And I'm going to the office. I go to kind of pitch my concept of what do you think about something like this? Would the industry be interested in it?
Mm-hmm.
We're in a downturn. It's like, it would be great. We've actually thought about this before, but nothing like what you're building.
Yeah.
I walk out into the hallway, and there's Dallas sitting there. And it's like, hey, dude, what are you doing tomorrow? And he's like, nothing. I was like, why don't you come by the office? Comes by the office. I just kind of pitch him on this, what do you think of this? And Dallas is like, I think it's really cool. And then I say, hey, why don't you come back in tomorrow? And he comes back in tomorrow. And I happened to mention to Leslie, our chief administrative officer, I walked in, I was like, put an offer letter together for Dallas. And she was like, for what position? Doesn't matter, I'll make one.
Yeah.
I want Dallas on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Walked in, Dallas comes in the morning. I was like, how's it going, dude? Good. I said, do me a favor, take a look at this and let me know what you think. I'll be right back. Well, what is it? I'll look at it. And like he said, no idea, no application, it was just not working. Something told me, just again, the stars aligned.
That's it.
Here's Dallas sitting there. Dallas's background in leadership, personal development, the struggles, the attitude, just how do you go from what you guys have gone through, what I'll call, and we talked about this offline, but the depths of hell in combat to having the attitudes that you guys have.
Yeah.
My background was Navy. We're tossing cruise missiles from 1,000 miles away, kind of hanging out like, woo, this is a tough war. You guys are in the, mind the term, but you guys are in the heart of the shit. You are in the hell's fire each and every day, but yet your guys' attitude and your faith is probably where, for a lot of people, it wouldn't be. And I think that's a struggle that people in today's oil and gas are going through.
Yeah.
Is we as an industry, a lot of people have lost their way, and so that doubt creeps in. And the doubt is, it's not my fault. Why is this happening? I don't believe this. And like you said, I've given up on all hope.
Yeah.
Well, when you give up on hope, what else is there? You have faith and you have fear.
Yeah.
And if one is your belief, I mentioned this today in the Passive 40, if one is your belief and one is an emotion, why does fear over trump faith? Because as long as you have your life and you have your family and you have your attitude, everything else is materialistic.
That's right.
And it's easy to say, and people go, oh, you don't understand. Dallas and I go every day. Let's go find work. What are we doing? Everybody's under the same struggles. Just because I have an office to go to doesn't mean that the future isn't the same for everybody.
Sure.
But if I lose my house, hopefully that never happens. If I lost my house, it's a house. I can buy another one.
Yeah.
If I lose my car, buy another one. Everything else is materialistic. All you have is your attitude, your family, and your faith at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think your guys' testament to that is probably better than anybody's I've ever known, which is why I wanted to put this portion together and give you guys the opportunity to just kind of tell your story, because I think it is important in leadership that when you guys are banging on a door and you walk through and you walk into a combat situation, kind of like we talked about offline, if fear is what's driving you, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if we've been trained, we know what we need to do, our faith is where it needs to be, let's just go take care of business and let's all get out of here safely.
Yeah.
That's where I think a lot of people start having that detour. Is they let the fear and the I'm in a bad situation and that bad situation dictates my life.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning and you have two options, like you said. I can go like hell and try to find something and make it happen, and it might not be here in oil and gas, like you said. You told the story where each time it's like a pay cut. It's a pay cut. It's a pay cut. But yet your attitude is more positive and more positive and more positive. Hey, granted, you're making six figures one day, next day you're not making six figures, but you have your family, your faith, you have your dream, your
Absolutely,
vision.
man.
That's something that nobody can ever take away from you. All the rest is materialistic stuff. So I think it's good. Well, I appreciate it, guys. I'm going to jump into kind of, I don't want it to be a letdown after what Gary and Alex just did, but I want to talk to you guys a little bit about training and kind of go from there. So what I want to do is take a moment. We're going to shift gears. I put a presentation together for you. Yes, technology allows me the opportunity to be able to be live and also have a presentation. What I want you to do is think about where you've been in your career, if you're working today, if you're not working today, and where it is you want to go tomorrow. And if you look at this presentation and watch this video for a moment and think about where you in your own development, and it can be in anything. And I've talked about before the 30-20-10 principle. If you spent 30 minutes a day, 20 days happens to work out to Monday through Friday in a month, that's 10 hours of training that you can do in something. And now, after what we've just talked about, might be the opportunity you need to learn a new craft, to learn a new skill, just to learn something so when the industry comes back in the other direction, you're where you need to be and you're ready to go. So what I want to do is just kind of pass this over real fast. I'm going to put this video on and then I'm going to come back in about 4.5 minutes. So I want to talk to you briefly about what's called the learning curve, and it's something that I focus on a lot, and it's something that I think is very important, especially in today's oil and gas industry, because there's a lot of people out there who actually think they're better at their jobs than what they truly are. And what I want to do is just kind of show you the psychology of what goes into actual skills development. So as we know, if you've never done a task before, the more you practice, the better you are at it, all right? So if we look at this and we go, okay, you're brand new in a position. How good are you at doing it? Well, you're not very good. Well, the more we practice, the better off you're going to be. And that's just a reality. So as you've always heard the saying as a kid growing up, practice makes perfect. But for me, it's don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you don't get it wrong. And a lot of people, once they've mastered a skill or quote unquote have done a skill correctly, they give up and they stop trying to progress. Now, that being said, if we look at performance time, so how fast can you actually execute the task? So this is where the do it until you don't get it wrong part comes in. Well, when we first start a new skill, it takes us a long time to do it. If you've ever rebuilt say a component at work, if you've ever tried, playing the guitar or piano or anything, doesn't matter what it is, your performance time, it takes you a long time to actually do it. But again, the more we practice, the better off we are. And that's just the reality of it. So practice makes perfect. Not only will you learn the skill better, but you'll be able to execute it a lot faster. The part that concerns me the most, though, is this next slide. So job performance. So we're on the job, we've learned a new skill, we're practicing a lot, and this is what happens. Here's your career as a whole, if you take a look at it. Now, I've broken it down. The dotted lines are kind of the different phases in your career. First and foremost is rapid qualification. You're new to a position, you're learning it, and like with the skills, we're talking about the holistic part of what you do for work. So for my discipline in subsea, we have a lot of different areas. So you might be great at, say, tensioners, but you might not be very good at some other things. So first part of what we're doing is rapid qualification. Now we move up, we're into proficiency development. You're progressing in your career. You have the basic competency of what needs to be done, and you're just growing. You're growing as an individual, and the years are passing, and hopefully you're challenging yourself each and every day. Then we get to peak performance. You're now a work center supervisor, and this can be also for any position. I talk about constant development. So let's say you get to peak performance and you get promoted. Well, guess what? Now you're back in rapid qualification and we're going back through this cycle again. But unfortunately for a lot of people, once we get to peak performance, the next thing is what happens is what concerns me. We get overconfident and our performance starts to decline. It starts to decline because now we take for granted that we know what we need to do and we get lazy. Where in the beginning, we are very energetic and very enthusiastic and just very engaged into what needs to be done. But now we're getting bored. We're getting overconfident. We're getting complacent. And unfortunately, this is where our performance starts to decline. In the Gulf of Mexico today, Bessie's getting ready to start doing competency assessments or having people do competency assessments. And unfortunately, there's a lot of guys in supervisory positions whose performance is starting to decline because they've been in that position for too long. It's now become a routine. And like with the performance scale we saw in the last slide, they've peaked. and they've gotten to a point where they're not pushing themselves. And this overconfidence is starting to cause a problem. And what we find is a lot of times when incidents take place, it's the overconfidence or someone overlooking something or someone just not doing what they're supposed to be doing because, hey, I know what needs to be done. I don't need to go to procedures. And this is where procedural drift starts to take place. So when you think about your career, think about where you're at. You know, if you're getting close to that peak performance, if you're starting to become a subject matter expert, you have to keep pushing yourself each and every day. If you're not willing to do that, you're going to have problems. And those problems are going to come into place because you're going to miss something. And if you're not constantly engaging and you're not constantly trying to push yourself to learn more, then what's going to happen is you're going to become bored. And you're going to do yourself more damage because the guys that work for you will not be developing either. If you're a senior supervisor and you don't take time to train your people, what makes you think that your people are going to actually take time to train themselves? If you're not engaging, if you're not pushing them, they're not going to push themselves. And so I think it's very important when we look at this, think about where you're at, you know, and understand that once you get to that peak performance and you get promoted, you're a assistant, and now you're being promoted to a manager. You're a manager going to a director. You start all over again, years in position. And now we're going to go through rapid qualification. You're going to learn the job. Then you're going to be on the job for a while, and your proficiency is going to start to go up. And then you're going to get to that peak performance again, and then you're going to start to decline. And you're going to decline because you're bored. You need that new challenge. What's that new push? Think about where you're at. Constantly develop yourself. And what you're going to find is you're going to have a successful career. If you get complacent, something's going to happen, and then it's going to be on your shoulders. So I want to talk to you briefly. All right, so there you go. What I want to do is I want you to think about where you're at today and where you're at in your development. Now, if you're working, hey, that's fantastic. But that doesn't mean you stop and you get complacent. What it means is that you have to develop yourself each and every day. And here's something to think about. You know, I talk about the 6 steps to becoming a subject matter expert. And if you're in the field, or if you want to get back into the field, this is something I want you to do and think about your discipline as a whole. First and foremost, when I teach people, when I do competency assessments, this is what I do. I take you on a tour and I ask, can you identify all the pieces of equipment that you work with? If I did a walk around with you, can I walk up to you and say, hey, what is that? And you say, that is the HPU pump. And I say, okay, great. Step 2, how does it work? Explain to me how it works. Can you explain to me how the pump works? How does it build pressure? How does it maintain pressure? How does it do the things that it's supposed to do? Step 3 is how do you operate it? And, when we talk about how do you operate it, how do you turn the pump on? What's the primary start? What's the secondary? What's the emergency? How do you go about making this thing work the way it's supposed to work? Step 4 is how do you maintain it? What type of maintenance do you do? And the reason I ask that is because when I'm doing competency assessments, there's different levels to what the people know. And this is where the gap starts taking place. If you know what it is, if you know how it operates, and you know how to operate it, great. A lot of that is the theoretical stuff that takes place. You can learn about that in the books. How do you maintain it? Now we're getting into the practical. You know, when you're doing your routine PMs, what is it that you're doing? And when you're doing them, what is it that you're looking for? And a lot of people don't truly understand what it is they're looking for. They just go through the motions. The next part is how do you troubleshoot it? And this is where you start getting into that higher level of learning, that cognitive thinking. If you can troubleshoot it, because you have to know how it works, you have to know how to operate it, you have to know how to maintain it. Because if it's not working the way it's supposed to, what's the next step in the process? Troubleshooting. How do you troubleshoot it? Last but not least is what I call the part-whole method. And that is, how does this one piece work in the whole system? The HPU pump, what is its primary purpose? For operating the BOP. What is the HPU pump? For function in the top drive. How does this all work as a big unit? If you can get to that level of understanding with all the equipment, I take you through a walk around in your space, and it can be anything. You can be an auto mechanic. Explain to me what that is. It's this. You know, cars today, I couldn't tell you when I lift the hood. It's just a big mess. But back in the day, what is that? You know, that's the alternator. That's the starter. How does it work? What do you do? What type of, stuff do you do with it? A lot of people don't understand that stuff when it comes to your discipline and the work that you do. And I think it's very important. If you want to get to the next level, and really want to get back in the game, if you're out of the game and you want to get back into it, you need to start thinking about the things that you need to do. If I get back into the field, and I've mentioned this before just real quick, if 100 of your peers who are all in the same discipline who have lost their jobs all line up and we're at the starting line and we all hand our CVs in, what makes me different from you? What makes you different from me? Back in one of the daily grinds, I did a thing about, apples to apples. Don't be apples to apples, be apples to pineapples. You need to put yourself out there to be ahead of your competition. Part of it's attitude. If I sit down and do an interview with somebody, how do they present? What's their CV look like? What's their clothes look like? If you come in with a horrible attitude, you're not starting that process off very good. But think about the bigger picture. If you're getting ready to get back in the game, Gary mentioned earlier, you might actually have to think about going into a different discipline. There's a lot of guys who are not willing to step back in their careers to move forward in life. And unfortunately, it's disappointing because there are a lot of people that is a struggle. And the reality is this. If I've told the story before, when I was a young kid, my dad lost his job in the 70s during the automotive industry. My dad would go pick apples, he would do handyman jobs, he would do whatever it took to put food on the table. There are a lot of guys I personally know, who are not willing to take a lesser role because they're not willing to take a pay cut. I've established myself up here, I'm gonna maintain that lifestyle. The reality is you might have to start back over to move forward. So I want you guys to think about that. Gary and Dallas talked about, having the faith and having a positive attitude and just believing and having that conviction that no matter how bad it gets, we're going to come out on the other side. That's a struggle. That's a challenge for a lot of people, and that's something that you need to be willing to do and have that deep down inside. You are going to have bad days. We all have them. I'm the president and CEO of my own company. There are days when I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders, and as I've joked about here before, I could come in and take 5-hour energy all day long. Hell, I'll go to the extreme. I could go on crystal meth, never sleep, never eat, and just work. That doesn't change the industry. When the industry is ready to change, opportunities are going to become available. What I have to do is I have to think outside the box and go try to find other opportunities. We have the Leaders Expedition. People don't want to come to class because they don't want to go through the typical class. Let's build a class that takes people out into the mountains. Let's build things that nobody else is doing. How do I differentiate myself from my competition? You need to think about that when it comes to dealing with yourself and the things that you deal with each and every day. What I want to do is I want to give you one past the 40 real quick before we leave. I think it's good for this kind of topic that we've been on. I'm grateful for the last 52 minutes that you guys have been on board with us. And let me just give you this past the 40 to give you something to think about for the rest of your day. Hi, Michael Fry. I want to welcome you to Past the 40, where I'm going to give you something to think about as you go on through your day. It's important to keep the faith. The most amazing things in life tend to happen right at the moment you're about to give up on hope. In order to be successful, you have to remain positive. There are going to be a lot of days where you want to quit and just give up. The challenge is you never know what day success is going to come, which is why it's very important that you keep hustling each and every day. Sure, there's going to be days where you want to quit. There's going to be days where it hurts and you think this is never going to happen, but you have to keep the faith. You have to keep the hustle and keep pushing forward because success is coming your way, but not if you quit and give up. All right, guys, there it goes. I am grateful for the time that you spent with us. Dallas and I are going to be putting on some more of these as we move forward. Obviously, this first one was an hour. I really wanted to set the bar and set it very high, and that is it's all about the way you wake up each and every day. If you wake up and the world sucks, that's how your attitude is going to be all day. If you wake up and say, you know what? Yeah, this is a difficult time, but it's a difficult time for a lot of people. It's all about your attitude. And like I just said in that Pass of 40, you never know when something good's going to come along. I had an individual contact me here real quick, looking for a job, needing a job, highly qualified. And it's like, look, I don't have anything, I'm sorry. 2 days later, I get an email and says, hey, do you happen to know anybody that would fit in this position? Guess who I called? I called that guy that happened to be sitting here in front of me. And you have to keep hustling, and you have to try to keep moving forward, and you have to keep the faith that sooner or later something good's going to happen. Because if you don't, you're just going to run yourself in the ground, and at the end of the day, it's not going to be worth it. So yes, material possessions, you can replace them. You can't replace yourself and you can't replace your family. So stay positive, keep moving forward. And from Dallas, Gary, and myself, I thank you for this opportunity to spend this hour with you. And please leave me your feedback and let me know what you think.